in 6.5 minutes, I'm going to try to answer a few of those questions. I'll leave aside the issue of what does success look like for now, but I think we'll get into that. I kind of wanted to tackle 3 issues that I think are questions themselves in how to understand what's happening. The first is, what is the corruption campaign about? This is a question that is asked frequently, and I think there's been an unfortunate tendency among analysts to kind of look for a single answer, if you will, when in fact anything like this that is complex in the way that it's complex is about many things. And I think with Xi Jinping, I like to refer to it as his multi-layered cake of motivation for the for the campaign. I think at the elite level, the so-called tiger hunt level, it is very much about power politics. It's been very striking that strangely enough, no one close to Xi Jinping or anyone in that sort of so-called princeling group of individuals has fallen in the course of the campaign so far, and that it has been very focused on former presidents, both Jiang Zemin and even Hu Jintao's network, and other powerful actors inside the system. So certainly I think at that tiger level there's a very strong component of this power grab, if you will. In the military and the security services, I think it's slightly different, and we can get into that further, maybe in the Q&A as to what it means. And then there's the so-called fly level, or the lower level, and I think there the motivation is very different than at the elite level. There, I think it really is about the ugly face of the regime, if you will, that the common people of China see every day. The rapacious local official, the rapacious local police official who shakes people down for various reasons, the child of a local official who drives through the streets in some brightly colored Italian sports car and mows down a lot of people and and is not punished, these sort of issues. And I think Xi Jinping very much sees this as very deleterious, right, to the party. And I think there's a very strong almost messianic component to Xi Jinping, where he does see himself very much as the savior of the party, and he sees this as integral to saving the party. And then I think he views the process as a natural precursor, in fact a necessary precursor, to being able to do these very ambitious reforms that he laid out at the third plenum, right? And a sense that if you don't, if you will, prepare the ground with this kind of anti-corruption work, those reforms are guaranteed to be successful, and you might end up repeating something like what happened in the Soviet Union and then Russia, with a series of kleptocratic oligarchs taking over state assets, this sort of thing. So I think that's clearly part of what it's about. Second question, when will it end? This is something that gets asked a lot, and is it even fair to call it a campaign anymore? Because campaigns end at some point. There's a lot of debate about this, and I think people again have a tendency to oversimplify perhaps, and to sort of say, when are we going to exit the destructive phase, anti-corruption, and enter the constructive phase of moving toward reform? And I would argue that, at least from Xi Jinping's point of view, those two things are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they go very closely together. You can't do one without the other. And I also think the regime has been actually quite transparent about how long this is going to last. At the sort of traditional cycle, when they came back from Beidaihe in 2013, and they had the standard Politburo meeting, and they announced the dates for the plenum, and everyone thought, wow, third plenum, that's going to be important. They focused on that. They missed the fact that they also announced that they had a 5-year anti-corruption plan running through 2017. So at a minimum, it's going to go at least that long. And I think it will probably go longer. And that means that this will be sustained. And I think the other piece of that is that, surprisingly, shockingly, and this speaks to some of your questions, it still appears to be the case that not everyone's getting it, that this is sustained. Some of these internal speeches that she has supposedly given that have been leaked kind of talk to this issue and sort of say, one of the key targets in the campaign is the memo to all of you who haven't gotten it yet, that this is serious. I like to call these people candidates for Darwin's waiting room, but they're still there. And this is an ongoing, and she, I think, has to continue to validate the campaign. And then the last question kind of speaks to a couple of your questions, which is it harmful in some way? And I think the clearest evidence here, and I'm actually very keen to hear Yukon's thoughts, is it is harmful to the economy. I think they're discovering, as one senior official told me, they didn't recognize how dependent the economy in certain sectors, especially luxury goods, things like this, were dependent on cadres, which was kind of surprising to me that they didn't know that, but clearly they did not. And I think what we're seeing here in recent months is the the group of detractors, critics, whatever you want to call them, the people who are probably being the biggest victims of the anti-corruption campaign, their narrative early on to kind of push back against the anti-corruption campaign was that, you know, it's a mad power grab by Xi Jinping, and he's a megalomaniac like Mao, and therefore dangerous and will crash the party. I think that got some traction in some elite circles, but not much. I think what we see now with the economy decelerating rapidly, much more rapidly, obviously, than they initially expected, that group has modified that narrative, and the narrative now is that the aggressive pursuit of the anti-corruption campaign is shaving additional, whatever you want to say, point and a half off of GDP, and that ultimately undermines their justification to continued one-party rule. And my sense is, from my last trip there, that this narrative is gaining some traction, and that the detractors like this narrative because it's out of Xi Jinping's control to some degree. The economy is the economy, and it'll do what it'll do. So I do think it's harmful in that regard. It's also harmful in another way in that it has caused, pick your term, I use near paralysis in the system with regard to decision making. As you were pointing out, you know, local officials don't want to put their head up, they don't want to take risks, and they certainly don't want to approve deals, and that has real impacts for the business community. So I'll stop there and
Well, thank you, Chris.